Hello and welcome to another weekly roundup of the sort of free PC games. Just before we start, if you do enjoy the video, please do give it a like and consider subscribing so you can keep seeing these weekly roundups. Okay, let's go. First up from the Epic Games Store is Machinarium, a point and click adventure available until the 4th of September. This is a beautifully hand-drawn tale of a robot who's been thrown onto a rubbish dump and has to return to the city to save his robot girlfriend from a couple of robot bullies. You need to make your way into the city via a series of locations that each present a puzzle to be solved. All of these puzzles are presented visually. There's no speech or explanation, just some thought bubbles from a couple of characters and the environment that you see. There's not a lot of tutorialising in this game. You are taught that you can pick things up, you eat them for some reason to keep them in your inventory, can extend upwards to reach things higher, or can press downwards to interact with things on the floor. One thing to note is that you can't move very quickly when you're extended or compressed, and some of these puzzles are actually timed, so it's something to bear in mind. As well as the standard point and click, I've got an object, I've got to use it somewhere kind of puzzles, there are also logic puzzles or mini games that you need to complete in order to move forward in your quest. There is a very interesting and unique hint function if you get stuck, which I did a lot. You can go for a single hint that directs you to what the actual objective on the screen is, if you hadn't been able to work that out. But there's also a far more extensive picture book version of a solution that requires you to play a very simple side-scrolling shooting game to access. It works pretty well, I think. Machinarium did pretty well with critics when it came out in 2009, though none of the reviews are accessible now, so we only really have the scores to go on. It sits at an 85 on Metacritic for both critic and user reviews, though the newer reviews on OpenCritic are 6 to 7 out of 10. Not that I can find them, of course, thanks passage of time for wiping stuff off the internet. So I'll have to look at the Metacritic user reviews and Steam reviews. It sits at a very positive on Steam, though from what I could gather, there was some review bombing of the game for political reasons, so it looks like it should really be an overwhelmingly positive. People love the look and feel of the game. It does generate a fantastic atmosphere from the graphics, animation and soundtrack. The story was also a very strong positive for people, despite it only being told visually. The puzzles were generally regarded as inventive, challenging but not frustrating. Not sure I agree with that bit. The relatively few negative reviews found the puzzles to be illogical and overly convoluted as a main issue, and didn't like the fact that your robot needs to be right next to an interactable object to tell that it is actually interactable with. The inability to cancel animations like walking was also mentioned as frustration, because if you click somewhere you can't stop the robot moving there even if it was a mistake. Overall, this is a beloved point and click game, and it is considered a classic. I've played for a couple of hours and I can see why it's considered a classic. However, I don't really enjoy point and click adventure games. I'm not sure why, as I like games that are kinda similar. I just find them generally, and specifically with Machinarium as well, illogical and convoluted. It's just not my thing. As a result, my opinion on this is pretty moot. So if you like point and click adventure games, based on everyone's opinion, I think you should grab this right away. The second game from Epic this week is Make Way, a multiplayer top-down racing game, available until the 4th of September. This is a twist on the Micro Machines type of top-down racing game, where here you're cooperatively building your own tracks. Each player, or a bot if you're playing solo like I was, adds a piece of a track before you start racing, and each part of the track has its own checkpoint. If any cars drop off the track, they're automatically added back at the start of the next checkpoint. So you're pretty much always racing, even if you do mess up. You do miss out on points because you are awarded points at the end of the race. Once you've done the race, you add another piece of track and then race the new extended track again. The aim is to get to, currently in my race, is 4,000 points. It's not the first to 4,000, however. Once you get to 4,000 you stop, so it is possible for the other players to actually reach 4,000 as well. If that happens, you go to a sudden death race to determine the winner. You gain player experience as you complete certain challenges, moving you up a season pass style progress bar, where you unlock new track pieces and new cars. Not sure why this was in there, to be fair. You can play with up to 6 players locally, though my match with the bots was only 4. And there is an online battle mode, though even on a Saturday afternoon I couldn't find a game at all. There are options to create your own lobby or run a private match, so that might well work out better for you. You get to tailor your play mode, as the game includes weapons, hazards and track pieces that have holes in them. You can turn off walls and a whole host of stuff I'm sure that I've not seen yet. All of which promises extra chaos if you want to include them. Make Way sits at a 79% on OpenCritic and an 83% on Metacritic, and it's at a very positive on Steam with 92% of people recommending it. The track creation was a big plus for people, meaning you always have unique tracks to race on each time. Unsurprisingly, the multiplayer aspect was also a huge hit with people, especially local play, where you get the fun of hitting your friends with a huge hammer. Who doesn't enjoy that? There were a lot of people saying how much they laughed out there on Steam, playing multiplayer. Most of the negative reviews I've read revolved around 2 things that have actually been fixed since they posted. Remote lag and an update that changed the feel of the physics that made the game feel pretty poor. I didn't really see much more negative stuff than that. I played solo with bots because apparently that's my life now, and I enjoyed it. I had fun. The game controls well if you keep the steering assist on. I did not try without it. For some reason, I didn't like how if you were leading, which I was most of the time, I was always at the very top of the screen, and it just made me feel uneasy. It does make the track harder to race, of course, because you need to rely on your memory of this newly created track, which in solo mode you don't get a huge amount of time to study. But it wasn't that. I don't know what it is, just something weird about me that, I don't know, almost felt like claustrophobic. Outside of that, it was a good time. It's fun to nudge cars off the track or blast them with mines, and the track pieces and hazards made things even more interesting. Definitely worth grabbing this one, especially if you can get a few friends together. It's just a shame that more people aren't playing this online now. Okay, on to the Prime Gaming selection for this week. First up is City of Legends, The Ghost of Misty Hill, which is a hidden objects game available via the Legacy Game Store until the 1st of October. The majority of games from the Legacy Game Store follow the same basic formula, and this is no exception. They don't have the most production value of any game. The voice acting is normally pretty bad, and generally not matched to the a little bit janky animation, but I do have a soft spot for them. These games present you with a bunch of static screens with interactable spots dotted all around them. Within these scenes are objects that you can pick up and put into your inventory, and a puzzle that requires you to use a different object to solve. The puzzle part is figuring out which object to use where. There's a chain of objects that you need to use across multiple screens, i.e. there's an object in scene 3 that you use to get an object in scene 1 to get an object in scene 2. Etc, until you finish the game. At points you will be presented with a hidden objects minigame or a logic puzzle. There's normally a basic story going on just to hang the rest of the game off of, though The Ghost of Misty Hill has a better story than the majority of these games. It's not saying much, but it did actually give me a couple of surprises, so that's something. The areas that you move between are themed around that ongoing narrative, and so are the objects that you use. If you get stuck at any point, the game offers a range of difficulties that, on the easy end, let you use a hint function to highlight the area you need to solve next in order to progress as often as you like. It gives you the option to switch out of a minigame into a match 3 game, or choose an easy or hard version of the puzzle, and straight up just do the puzzle for you. As you move up in difficulty, a timer is added to the hint function, or at the highest level just completely disabled, and you can no longer skip the hard versions of the puzzle at the higher end. All of these options can be set separately using a custom difficulty, so you can tailor your experience exactly how you want. There are no reviews on OpenCritic or Metacritic, there never are for these games. Over on Steam, it sits at a positive, but there's only 15 reviews. People generally found the puzzles challenging and the story interesting, though there was a negative review that found it repetitive and another that had screen glitches, which I didn't have in my 2 hours of gameplay. This was on the more challenging end for these games out of a legacy game store. The number of areas was relatively restricted, down to maybe 5 or 6 at a time, which reduces the worst aspect of these games, which is the backtracking to use items and having to remember exactly where an open interactable area was out of 10 screens worth. There's still backtracking, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't get too out of hand. A couple of the logic puzzles were reasonably difficult, and there wasn't too much in the way of illogical uses of items, which is a bugbear of mine. The only one that stands out is a bunch of CDs being used as a wheel for something very heavy. I don't see that working out too well in real life. I played for 2.5 hours, and going by the times on Steam, it seems like it's about a 10-hour or so game. Overall, the story is okay. The voice acting is bad as usual, but there does seem to be quite a lot of content, given that this is the collector's edition. There's extra optional content within the main game, and there's an extra bonus chapter. If you like these games, I think this is one of the better ones, and certainly seems to be full of content. Fantasy Empires is next up from Prime, available until the 1st of October via the good old game store. This is another old school D&D game, much like last week's Silverbox Classics. This one's a strategy game from 1993, also set in the worlds of D&D, and of course runs in DOSBox, but does use a mouse. As with many games from the early 90s, you have to read the manual, you just do. It's so hard to figure out what's going on without it. It's not that it's complicated, it's just that none of the buttons have labels, and it just doesn't tell you what's going on. Getting started, you can create your own character, along with their class and stats, which you can just put to 18 for some reason. Then you choose between a full campaign or a smaller scenario. There's a handful of buildings to put into each of your bases that allow you to recruit various class-based units, elf, dwarf, mage, fighter, provided you have the required buildings. It also lets you recruit heroes of that type, all of which of course cost you gold, that you gain every turn from the lands that you own. You conquer lands by moving your troops into neutral territories to take them over, or onto opponents' lands to force a real-time fight, where you take control of your hero, and, if you're better than I am, attack the defending troops, once you work out what keys you need to use to control your character. Magic's also available if you have the required class of hero, that allows you to cast spells on parts of the map. You can send a bit of lightning down to do some damage to the troops in an enemy city, for example. You can also send your heroes on quests to find magic items, which can level them up if they come back alive, they might not, and might provide you with a magic item that really helps them in their battles. A +1 axe, a ring of protection, that kind of thing. There are different levels of mission available, and there's a bit of risk reward because obviously the rewards will be better, but the chances of them not coming back are higher. This is obviously too old for critic review, so over on Steam it's at a positive with 84% of people recommending it. Generally it still seemed to be charming despite its over 30 years of age, though it was noted that aspects of the game are clunky because of that. The negative reviews mention crashes, which I didn't see at all, and one person took issue with the price for such an old game. Obviously that doesn't matter if you're getting it for free. I played for a couple of hours, which did include a little bit of time reading the manual, and I thought it was a decent strategy game. It's a bit on the unforgiving side, because that's how the 90s were. So it will probably take a while to get good at it, I think. The real-time battle is an interesting aspect, though I don't know that it adds that much. It didn't seem to make any difference to the actual outcome of the fight. And you can just bypass it by using the sim battle option if you're not finding it that interesting or useful. If you are happy to read the manual and give this a try, there is a good strategy game there, as long as you don't have a better one to play. Tin Hearts is a puzzle game available until the 15th of October via the Good Old Game Store over on Prime. This is a pathing game, where you have to set up a path for a bunch of toy soldiers to walk from their toy box along a series of workspaces in a room up to a toy soldier sized magical doorway. As you progress, you move from just having wooden blocks available to redirect your ghostly tin friends to being able to possess drums to set up jumps between work surfaces, or cannons that allow you to knock down objects like planks to create walkways. Later on, you also get the ability to possess one of the soldiers to do a spot of platforming to investigate areas the usual troops will not enter. You also get the ability to stop, reverse or speed up time, which is essential since many of the puzzles need you to reuse blocks, having you pick them up once they've done their job and putting them down further along in the path. So you really need to stop the ever-moving soldiers from marching to their deaths off the edge of a table. You can always reset the level or rewind time before they all fell off, so there isn't a fail state as such in this game, and pause in time will allow you to magically see the path the soldiers will take as you set your various path redirections, so you'll know if they're walking to their doom or not. All of this takes place in a 3D environment, allowing you to move around the room and through solid objects because, as the possessing ability suggests, apparently you're a ghost. This ties into the story, which is told via in-game scenes as you move through the levels, which tells the tale of a toy maker and his family, and sometimes will let you know the gameplay purpose of one of the objects in the world. The Tin Hearts page on GOG says that this is a VR game, but this version isn't. There is a separate VR version for the game, but this is just normal PC game. This did quite well with the critics, sitting at a 79 critic and 78 user rating on OpenCritic, and a 76% for PC reviews on Metacritic. I specify that because there are control issues people had on other platforms. Everyone liked the heartfelt story, though there was some criticism of the controls and movement even on PC. Most reviewers also mentioned how this was a 3D Lemmings rip-off, or homage, depending on whether they liked it or not. Generally, the puzzles were judged as inventive with a good increase in difficulty, though some people did say it got repetitive. It sits at a very positive on Steam, with people enjoying the look of the game, and most people feeling that the puzzles never became too obscure or too difficult. As with the critics, Steam reviewers also enjoyed the story, though control issues did raise their head, including problems with the keyboard and mouse, and the difficulty of judging the platforming part of the game. I played for the mandated 2 Earth hours, completed the first act and had fun getting introduced to many of the control options, and I tolerated the interruptions that the slow moving story introduced, reluctantly. I played with a controller and never had an issue controlling the game, though I never actually got to the point of unlocking the soldier possession ability, so I don't know how that works out with the platforming part. Given its 12 to 15 hours expected runtime, it's obviously very early days within the game for me, but I've not felt the game got repetitive so far. I would give it a recommend for puzzle fans though, because most of the people did praise the gradually increasing puzzle complexity over the length of the game. Labyrinth City, Pierre the Maze Detective, is a simple maze puzzle game, free from the Amazon game launcher until the 22nd of October. You play as Pierre, who somehow landed a fake job as a maze detective, in pursuit of Mr. X, who I'm sure Elon Musk likes, who nicked a magic stone that creates mazes. Somehow the fake job became real. You chase him down across 10 levels, each a colourful picture book style scene that has turned into a maze. Every level has collectibles to find in the form of stars, diary pages and rewards from chests. Plus there's a mini game on each that awards a special trophy. There are many things to interact with, which always get highlighted by a little pop-up speech balloon, and clicking them will prompt an animation, often a funny one. There are checkpoints to reach in the form of characters to speak to, which will save your progress if you do quit out of the game at any point. Things are always happening in the scene. It's very bright, it's very loud, and that is absolutely what it should be, given that this is a game that is aimed at children. It's adapted from a children's book, and it really does look like one. This did well with critics, sitting at an 81% for PC over at Metacritic, and a 76 on OpenCritic, and it sits at an overwhelmingly positive on Steam. Across the board, people love the art, the animations and the level of detail across the levels. The humour was also praised, as were the many references and Easter eggs. The lack of difficulty was deemed appropriate for the target audience, so the challenge of finding every collectible was noted. Some did find that annoyingly time consuming though, but I mean that's collectibles, right? A few people had difficulty controlling the character, especially when entering and exiting buildings that move your characters to new levels. And it appears that there were some issues with achievements on Steam, which aren't a factor here, as the Amazon Games launcher unfortunately doesn't support achievements at all. A few people thought the 5 to 7 hour completion time was a bit short, but it was honestly hard to find that many negative reviews. The ones that I saw mostly felt cheated that this wasn't a Where's Wally Waldo style game, but I don't know that it ever said it was. I played for around 2.5 hours, completed 8 out of the 10 levels, and I'm probably going to leave it there. The game is very simple, as it should be, though like the best children's films there's enough references here aimed at adults that will raise a smile to make it an enjoyable experience to play the game with a kid. It's a bit too simple for me to play through by myself. I do think it's extremely well done, and I think it deserves the marks it received. I'm just quite a long way from the age range of the target market. Okay, final one for this week is Heroes of Loot, a twin-stick pixel art arcade shooter, which was really hard for me to say, available via the Good Old Game Store until the 29th of October. This is a very straightforward game, where you choose between 4 characters, an elf, a warrior, a wizard or a Valkyrie. There is a 5th, a barbarian, but that's locked behind getting to level 30. Each has their own stats that in practice don't seem to make all that much difference. You choose one and you get thrown straight into a dungeon. As you kill the enemies that come at you, you level up, increasing the power and speed of your weapon. There are different power-ups you can collect, like an AoE lightning room or a flame room. You can pick up healing and XP potions, gold, you know, the standard twin-stick shooter game fare. By the way, it is a shooter, there are no melee weapons, even on the barbarian. You can spend your gold in a shop and get seemingly random quests from another area that typically involve killing a set number of enemies within a time limit, where you get the same kind of reward that you could get in the shop. At some point on each level, a key will drop from one of the mobs, allowing you access to the next level. There is a small bit of meta progression in the form of equipment you can pick up for your characters. Each of them have 6 to collect, and as far as I can tell, it just starts you at a high level of difficulty. It doesn't actually provide any benefit beyond that. Though, I could be wrong, the game actually doesn't tell you. Just as a quick extra point, there aren't any achievements available on the GOG store, even though there are on Steam. Over at Metacritic, there's not actually any reviews for the PC version, though it does sit at an 84 for iOS. So yes, this was a mobile game originally, I guess. There's only 2 reviews on OpenCritic, and only one of those is rated, so not especially useful. We've got to go over to Steam, where it sits at a mostly positive with 70% recommending it. Not actually that amazing for Steam. The positive reviews like the simplicity of the gameplay, and guess what? They also love the pixel art. Never have guessed that was going to be there. Those that didn't enjoy the game pointed to the narrow confined areas reducing the game to shooting along corridors, and the lack of meta progression really hurting the replayability. Some people had issues with the keyboard controls, and I would recommend playing with a controller if you've got one. It really helps to get those tricky diagonal shots. People also found the gameplay got repetitive. I've played for about 3 hours. I've unlocked the Barbarian and found the first piece of equipment for a few of the characters, and it feels like I've seen quite a lot of what the game has to offer. There's fun to be had here, and there are still new monsters turning up to fight, so it's not quite run its course, but it is starting to feel a little bit repetitive, even at 3 hours. There are some frustrations. Spawning into one of the rare large open areas can just instantly kill you if there's ranged enemies. There's just no way to get out of it. As you progress, the dungeons do auto upgrade the difficulty, so that becomes less of a rare occurrence. As some of the reviews mentioned, it lacks a compelling reason to continue playing, like a skill or perk tree to unlock. So I think it'll probably be a short-term game for most people. It is fun for that short time though, so if you want to spend a few hours shooting some pixel art monsters, I think you should give this a try. Just don't expect this to be a long-term game. Not too bad for puzzle fans this week, which is, I think, generally the case because of Prime. Hopefully you found something you liked. And talking about liking stuff, please do give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing. I'll be back next week, so thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.